Welcome back to Rising. Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Let's talk about it. So 6 career federal prosecutors don't just walk away from their jobs lightly, especially not people who've spent decades inside the Justice Department, handling some of the most complex fraud cases in the country. So when 6 prosecutors in Minnesota resign in a single day, there's a problem. At the center of this is the killing of Renee Nicole Good, a Minneapolis woman shot by an ICE agent. In moments like this, the expectation is straightforward. You investigate the use of deadly force transparently, independently, and with the goal of determining whether the law was followed. That's how trust is built. Instead, the Justice Department chose to forego a civil rights investigation into the shooting, and a decision that was so alarming that several career prosecutors in the Civil Rights Division in Washington resigned in protest. What replaced that investigation is where things get even more troubling. According to multiple reports, rather than fully examining whether the ICE agent's actions were lawful, senior Justice Department officials pushed to investigate Good's widow, Becca Good, probing her supposed ties to activist groups that monitor immigration enforcement. This is the move that Joseph H. Thomas, the acting U.S. Attorney for Minnesota last year and a career prosecutor, reportedly objected to strenuously before he resigned. He also opposed the department's refusal to partner with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the state agency that routinely investigates police shootings, a decision that senior officials overruled. Now, Becca Good, in a statement released last week, captured the imbalance of that moment in plain language, saying she and her wife, quote, stopped to support their neighbors. We had whistles, they had guns. But no matter what you think about her statement, a fair investigation is necessary in this matter. Drew Evans, the superintendent of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, didn't mince words about what Thompson's departure means. He told the New York Times, quote, we're losing a true public servant. He went on to say we really need professional prosecutors and warned that the absence of a credible investigation into Renee Good's killing stands to, quote, undermine trust in our public safety agencies. Now, all of this is unfolding as political rhetoric around Minnesota is being deliberately inflamed from the top. President Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, fear not, great people of Minnesota, the day of reckoning and retribution is coming. That message came as protests spread, as state and city leaders urged federal agents to leave Minneapolis, and as the administration continued to insist the ICE officer acted in self-defense, even as questions remain and facts are still contested. Yes, Minnesota has faced serious fraud cases, with many of the defendants charged in the cases being of Somali origin. More than 90 people have been charged in schemes involving social service programs. Yes, that is the reason the administration decided to send in ICE. But fraud investigations don't cancel out civil rights, and they don't justify redirecting the machinery of justice towards a grieving widow while sidestepping scrutiny of an officer who used lethal force. When seasoned prosecutors resign en masse, when civil rights lawyers walk away in protest, and when accountability is replaced with intimidation, the message isn't subtle. When justice is real, it doesn't pick sides, shield power, or shift scrutiny away from the hardest questions. It serves everyone equally, or it falls and fails the very purpose it claims to uphold.
Yeah, look, I think it was very regrettable that that order came to look into Renee Good's wife, and that prompted the resignations of people who were doing very solid work on bringing the fraudsters to justice. Look, you can think that the evidence, the video will demonstrate that the officer, Jonathan Ross, was justified in the moment in thinking the vehicle was coming at him, and thus he was justified in shooting. You can hold that view without saying that we've demonstrated that she's a domestic terrorist, or that we, for some reason, have to probe that background, in order to smear the person who got killed. I don't see what that accomplishes, and I think only the most fervent, frothing at the mouth, right-wing defenders of militarized police are interested in doing that. That's not most of us. Again, even if you think, as I am leaning toward, having processed and having listened to what people had to say, thinking that charges would not be appropriate, that in the moment he thought the vehicle was coming at him, and in hindsight he could have just gotten out of the way. Probably, I don't think she was trying to run him down, but I think it will be deemed justifiable. But we can leave it there. We don't need to smear her family and all that. And these investigators don't want to do that either. They want to remain laser focused
on the incident at hand.
What everyone says is important, which is bringing fraud, prosecuting fraud. So sometimes you do have to prioritize like what you're caring about here, and this does reflect misplaced priorities to me. Like, take everybody off the fraud prosecution so they can dig up dirt on this,
And also, from what I understood, and I hate to kind of bring up even this activism link because we have no hard evidence that this is in any relationship to Renee Good or Becca Good. But as I looked into the surrounding organizations that I saw, mostly conservative websites saying that they were a part of, these are organizations that were doing things like literally arming themselves with whistles. And so then if they were part of this alleged organization, no, some of the instructions on the actual Instagram and Facebook pages linked to this organization were like, listen to orders, whistle to let people know they're in town. Nothing was saying obstruct justice or do anything. So the investigation, if you're looking into whether this is a civil issue or criminal issue, if the ICE agent went too far, then we need to pursue and see if he went too far or if she acted out of the wrong. I don't think we need to go into her wife and see if whistling was part of the problem to let people know in their neighborhood. Some of these people, if they're still talking about the same page, were around a school district, which Becca Good apparently lives nearby.
It's a problem.
And they're whistling because they're trying to let people know if you're dropping your kids off at school and don't want to be harassed today, you hear the whistles, maybe turn around. Because you might look like a migrant to someone. And so you might get harassed in front of your children, which will scar them forever.
Okay,
these are people that are allowed to be around. You said that. They're allowed to be around, allowed to whistle, allowed to alert the community that ICE is there. This is not illegal things.
Right, but they're not allowed to obstruct what ICE is doing, to get in their way, to block the road in their cars, to use their cars in a threatening manner. And the wife, Becca Good, did say, the final words we see on that tape are, flee, baby, flee, or whatever, run, baby, run, instructing her to just drive off. That was a bad instruction that got her killed. So I don't know, did that idea just spring out of her head that the police are saying stop, and I'm telling this person that I'm my partner to drive away?
We don't know.
Is that part of the training? Is there an ICE protest group that is giving the instructions to people? Yeah, they're here illegitimately, so you don't have to listen to them, because that's bad advice. That was lethally wrong advice in this case. Say just drive off. She got her killed for that reason.
Now,
there's some moral blame there. It's not legal blame, but it's moral.
But isolating local officials out of this investigation and now understanding that 6 prosecutors quit because what seems like they were being pushed in a certain direction to kind of find backup evidence for the claims of domestic terrorism that Kristi Noem preemptively made about Renee Good. I think that this is all problematic when people are trying to find the transparency in what happened. Some people are actually doing what you said from your lens 2 days ago and calming down and trying to see what happened here and look at the video and say, I'm not a federal prosecutor. Let me see what comes out of this. But when the federal prosecutors are quitting because they said they're being pushed in a direction that obviously seems biased, well, that's problematic, and exactly why people said at least let the local officials be part of this to oversee, because they have an entirely different opinion of you. If 2 persuaded opinions come together and figure out what happened, maybe that's more chance of some justice as opposed to one side that specifically already said how they feel about Renee Good and her wife.
Local officials assist in deportations in the first place, and then we wouldn't have ICE having to patrol communities. That's a point I see a lot of conservatives raise, that the reason you have this, very showy and very inconvenient ICE presence in these places is because they have sanctuary city policies, and the local cops are not going to participate, don't help. That's why these kinds of things aren't taking place in red states, because the local police will just help apprehend illegal immigrants. That's the difference.
We're going to talk about this a lot more.
Up next, new information on the mysterious ailment known as Havana syndrome. Remember that? More on it after the break.